Okay. Um, Tonight's little rant. Well, I'll probably mix a few things in here, but keeping on the topic of plants and sacred. Well, tonight it's not really going to be that much of a sacred plant. Possibly. I don't know. I haven't done nearly enough research. Tonight's rant is going to be about Kratom, or Kratom. I say Kratom, and I'm not going to stop. Yeah, so suck it. Okay, so Kratom. It's the dried leaves of this little plant from Indonesia. People in Indonesia actually used to chew it like chewing tobacco, and it was common. It was as widely used as caffeine and coffee is in this country. But I think they actually outlawed it a few years ago because people were getting addicted. Might not be 100% accurate on that, I'm not sure. So there's all kinds of people on YouTube who have videos up about Kratom and how to take it, how to prepare it, and a lot of those people, their videos are geared towards the management of chronic pain, and I mean that's one of the main uses of Kratom in this country. As far as the chemistry and the science behind it, just basically the receptors in your brain that process opiates. Kratom fits perfectly into those same receptors that handle opiates and stimulate them in like fashion. Oh,
It's okay.
all right. Do you need it in here?
Hey?
Do you need it in here?
No, that's okay. I was just trying to find a quiet place to make a phone call, but I can go next time.
Okay. Everybody's looking for a quiet spot, I guess. So, where was I? Oh, yeah. So, I mean, Kratom is being used as an alternative to painkillers and opiates, and I must say that its painkiller properties are amazing. Now, there's more than enough. You type in Kratom into YouTube, you'll find more than enough information on preparations, how much to take, the best way to take it. Myself, I don't have any great deal of pain. I have an insanely high pain tolerance. And I don't take painkillers whatsoever. Even when I am injured, if I'm injured enough, if I've been injured enough to go to the hospital or go to the doctor, they'll come in, they'll see me, they'll tell me what's wrong with me, they'll write me a few prescriptions. Well, here's an example. I'm very curious. So, I was living way out in the country in rural Nova Scotia once, and I rolled out of bed one morning, about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was kind of bored. So I threw a bottle of water and some snacks into a backpack, and I walked out my back door, and straight into the woods. Just walked into the woods, and just, okay, we'll just go and we'll see where we come out. I walked a few miles back up into the woods, found my way to this old logging road, followed that road out for the longest time, and it's all littered with camps here and there, and found a few lakes, followed out a ton of paths that turned out to be dead ends, and then I hit pavement again, and I walked down the pavement until I found a road sign that told me where I was. It wasn't until then I realized exactly how much distance I'd traveled. So I was like, oh shit. So I turn around and start walking back. I had no watch with me, so yeah, I was completely unaware of the time, how long I'd been walking. I turned around and walked back, and I didn't get home until 8 o'clock that night. So, as best as I can figure, I covered about 20 miles of rough terrain in about 12 hours. I got home, I walked in the door, I closed the door behind me, and then just sat against the door and just slid to the ground. I was exhausted. Picked myself up the floor, had a drink of water, walked straight in my bedroom and went to bed. That was it. I wake up the next day, and my feet were about 3 inches off the floor because they blistered so bad. And the blistering was so bad that most of my toenails eventually fell off because they blistered underneath the toenails, and the blistering got so bad that, my toenails popped off. So I go, so we go into town and I go to the hospital, and the doctor, well, first he wouldn't believe me when I told him how I did this. But then he writes me out a prescription for antibiotics and painkillers. I go to the pharmacy, and I said to the girl, it's like, okay, can I just get the antibiotics? I don't really need the painkillers. And the look of she looked so baffled, like, you don't want the painkillers? And it's like, no, I mean, if I was in pain enough to the point that I would consider taking medication, they might as well sedate me completely, because I'd have to be in that bad a shape. I actually was hospitalized before once for about a week. I had a bad tooth that went abscessed, and my entire face grew out to about here. I was sick for a month. Like, it was, yeah. For, I don't know what it was, I think the doctors... Oh, you what? Oh no, no worries.
That's all right. It's good. You carry on doing that.
Okay, all kinds of visitors tonight. So, where was I? Oh yeah. So I think the doctors wouldn't let me into the hospital because they thought I was just trying to get a tooth pulled for free. And then the infection made it all the way up to here and all the way down to here. So they let me get to the point where they figured that, okay, like literally, they let me go to the point where if they had waited another 24 hours, the infection would have jumped into my lungs, and pretty much a 50-50 chance live or die from there. And the infection had made it into my head and started to drive me mad. The reason that I finally decided it was time to go to the hospital was that I was laying in bed trying to sleep, so sick and in so much pain. And actually, I sat up in bed, gave up on trying to sleep, and I sat there for a moment, and I thought to myself, hey, I'll just go get one of the rifles out of the living room, and I'll shoot myself in the head, and that'll make the pain go away. And for a few moments, that made perfect sense. Then, luckily, I snap out of it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's not even close to logical. So I go in the kitchen, and it's like, yeah, I have to go to the hospital now. So I go, and they finally admit me to the hospital. I was on 3 of the strongest kinds of antibiotics they could find for a week, intravenously. And I remember the first, I go in, they put me into the hospital, they put me in a room, I'm finally settled into a hospital bed. They put my IV in and start pumping me full of antibiotics. And then I remember after the antibiotics were running, the nurse comes in, she goes to put a syringe into my IV, and it's like, what's that? She's like, oh, it's just a little morphine. And I was like, just? No. Just and morphine don't go together. You can't downplay morphine. It's like, no, I'm good. She's like, you don't want it? And she looks so confused. I was like, no, I don't want it. No, thank you. And then she's like standing there like, well, it's already in the needle. What do I do with this now? Nobody's ever turned this down before. So yeah, I don't have, I don't really have a lot of use for painkillers. So with me and the Kratom, I use it for sleep because I get horrible insomnia. I just came off, a few months ago, I just came off a 6-month run of insomnia, which is triggered because of the light cycle in northern Canada. It's evil up here. And I was averaging 14 hours of sleep a week. That's all I sleep when the insomnia kicks in. So 14 hours of low quality sleep a week. I know most people wouldn't be able to function like that, but I've just become accustomed to it. So I order some Kratom, which, and like everything else I get from my supplier, top of the line, grade A stuff. So I decided to brew it into a tea. I take a few spoonfuls of tea, or Kratom, dump some hot water in, some lemon juice to free up some more alkaloids, let it steep for about 20 minutes. I drink this tea, which doesn't taste too bad. As far as all these plants that I've tried over the years, Kratom is actually pretty pleasant. Kratom just tastes like a really strong brewed orange pekoe tea, like Red Rose or Tetley or whatever. It just tastes like your standard run-of-the-mill tea, but you put 10 bags in and let it steep all day. So I drink it. Then I get very relaxed. This very numb, floaty, euphoric feeling kicks in. So then I lay down in bed, and literally, like, I could feel myself just sink into my mattress, into the most perfectly comfortable position ever. You know when you wake up and you're just in that, like, perfect position, and you don't want to move? Kratom does that every time. It's beautiful. So I drink it, I sink into my mattress, I sleep the entire way through the night, no dreaming, and I wake up feeling amazing. No groggy after effects, solid night's sleep. For an insomniac, that's better than a blowjob. So then, like, it just blows my mind. And my father also works up in northern Canada with me, and he has trouble sleeping here just because it's not home, it's not his own bed. Plus he's old, so he has to get up like 5 times a night to take a piss. And he's all busted up from different massive injuries over the years, so he's in a great deal, he's got a lot of aches and pains all through him. So I tell him about it at work one day. It's like, yeah, you gotta try this stuff. It's great, and blah blah blah. It'll put you to sleep because he's taking all kinds of stuff for sleep up here. NyQuil, Tylenol PM, melatonin, Sleep MD. Like, he's trying it all, and he just cycles through them. Once he gets immune to one, he'll switch back to another one. So I give him some Kratom to try. He takes it home, he makes it into a tea, and he drinks it. I come into work the next day, and I was walking over to him, and he didn't even have to say anything. I could tell by the smile on his face. I walk over, it's like, so did you try that? He's like, yeah. He's like, that is the first time I've slept through the night here in 4 years. He's like, I'm lucky I didn't piss myself because I get up so many times through the night to go to the bathroom. So for him, it was perfect. Because of all his injuries, the painkiller effect of the Kratom kept his aches and pains from waking him up through the night, and the sedative effect put him to sleep. So I mean, and that was a really happy moment in my life because I had invested the time in getting to know these plants. I had found something, that was really helpful, and I helped somebody with it. There was no greater satisfaction than that. It's like, oh, hey, I found this stuff here, give it a try, and it did better for them. So that was my first bag of Kratom. And then I found and then I drank some of it through the day. And if you drink it in the evening, and if you want to go to bed, it will give you a beautiful night's sleep. But you can drink it through the day and still stay awake, still function perfectly. It just really mellows you out. So it's great as an anti-stress beverage. So I get all of this in the first bag of Kratom. So I get my, and then that was it. I finished that bag, and I didn't get any again for months. And then I was just putting in an order, and I said, hell with it, and I ordered another bag of Kratom. And I got it, and different days I'd drink some through the day, and then I wasn't really having any trouble with insomnia then. But sometimes I would just drink it in the evening because it's such an amazing night's sleep and that amazing, comfortable feeling. But on the second bag, I started having these very bizarre dreams. Definitely not lucid dreaming, but definitely unlike anything I've had before. And it happened so many nights that I actually Googled it, and I found a lot of other people reporting strange dreams from Kratom. It's so hard to describe. It's not lucid dreaming, but I don't know. It's kind of like watching a movie for the first time. You just pop in a disc, you press play, and you watch the story unfold. The story, I don't know. It wasn't as bright and vibrant as a lot of the lucid dreams I have, bright, vibrant, exciting, but it was very, there were very down-to-earth, structured storylines, and it was entertaining. Like, I can't knock it. I've heard people describe it as artificial. Things felt colorless and artificial. It wasn't that much of a downer for me. It wasn't as bright and exciting as a completely lucid flying dream, but it was still really interesting and definitely warrants some more research, some more experimentation. I'm obsessed with dreams and dreaming. I've always been such a vivid, lucid dreamer, and when I do sleep, I fall into a level of sleep that allows me to do some very strange things. When I'm dreaming, I often become other people. Since childhood, I've had dreams like this. I'm rarely myself in a dream. But when I become these other characters, completely become them. I'll run into a situation that would require moral judgment, and that's how I notice that I'm a different character in the dream, because when I'm faced with the situation, I'll have different thoughts and different opinions and different morals and standards on the situation, and there's this little itch in the back of my head who remembers myself, and it's like, wait a second, that's not what I think on that matter. And then I realize I'm dreaming, and that I'm dreaming that I'm another person, and it's like, oh, okay, and then I just decide to let it roll, let it play out, and see where it goes. I have no time frame in dreams. I've had dreams that take place over weeks, months, years. Actually, even before I found my way to psychedelics, that is one thing. There was one specific dream that really helped me get past or get a little closer to being past my fear of death. I had a dream where I lived out an entire life as a person. I died as an old man in my 80s. And after living that long, I gotta tell you, when when you're getting up around 80, you're done. You've had enough. You're pretty much just hanging out because of some sense of responsibility to your family, because they'd be bummed out if you weren't there anymore. But you just hit this point where your fear of death is gone. You're like, okay, this has been a wild ride, but, any time now. So, I guess you could say in a way, years before psychedelics, I've always experienced things like this. Without plants, without ingesting anything. But the way that Kratom changed my dreams, even though I wasn't in control of it, it was definitely interesting. There's definitely more to be looked into there. Yeah. So, right there, if you're not a person if you just know already, or if you're unsure that your mind is open to the psychedelic experience, there are other plants that you can experiment with, and you can have visions or dreams or whatever, without, taking the risks associated with taking a giant dose of iboga or ayahuasca. Dream herb. There's one right there. God, no, I can't pronounce that name, the plant name. But just Google dream herb. That one was interesting. I had gotten a 15x dream herb resin from my supplier, and I smoked it. Nothing happened the first time. Smoked it, nothing happened the second time. Just put it back under my cupboard and left it there for a while. For months, actually. Then just one night I'm sitting around the house, I'm bored, so I decided to give it a shot again. I smoke some more of it, I go to sleep that night, and it hits. Now, up until then, I thought I understood what lucid dreaming was. But this took me to a whole new level, like literally the Matrix. I could just stand there in a room and change anything I wanted. I could change the color, the shape. I could decide, hey, I didn't want to be in a room anymore, and make the room go away and be standing outside. I remember one dream, I was fighting with this person, like actual, fisticuffs fighting, and I was losing. So it's like, hey, this sucks. This guy's, kicking my ass. So I just made myself bigger. Just by thought. It was awesome. Anything I wanted to, I could change. We'll get into the dream herb more in depth in another video, probably. So, and then the Kratom. Kratom will, you've got to work with it a bit. You've got to work with it a bit. And not all these plants will kick in right away. Your brain has to sort out what to do with this stuff. It might take a few tries over the period of months before this stuff has an effect. That's one thing that really pisses me off on YouTube. I see people doing reviews on this stuff and giving it 2 thumbs down. Guys, gals, you gotta consider this. One, you gotta consider who your supplier is. You gotta consider if these guys are getting it straight from the place it's growing, the grade A stuff, not the shit they scrape up after the floor after they package up the good shit. And you've gotta give it time to work. You don't just buy some dream herb off some random website, take it, smoke it, take a couple puffs, and it's like, yeah, wait 5 minutes and be like, oh, this stuff doesn't work. What a ripoff. You're just looking to get high, stick to your weed. So yeah, Kratom. An insanely effective natural painkiller. It's great for pain. It's natural. It doesn't have a lot of the horrible side effects that opiates do. I imagine there are some people who could get addicted to it, but it's a lot less addictive than opiates. And so it's great for pain, great for insomniacs, great for sleep. Like anyone out there who's been an insomniac like me for most of their lives, give Kratom a shot. You can't take it every night. It's a plant. It's just like ginseng. The first dose of ginseng you take will have you climbing the walls. If you take it every day for after about 3 or 4 days, you won't notice much of an effect. You build up a tolerance to these plant things really quick. But what I found from Kratom in regards to the insomnia was, You take Kratom tea one night and you have a good night's sleep, and it resets your sleep cycle, so you don't have to take it every night anyway. So yeah, great for pain. Really great natural alternative for pain management. Great for insomniacs. And well, as I get a chance to work with it more, maybe I'll do an update video on the dreaming effects. But yeah, so I guess, well, the kind of motivation behind doing the Kratom video today was I'm getting so sick of, well, I got like 1,000 people on my Facebook, and I'm getting so sick of being constantly bombarded with marijuana. You know, like medical marijuana, yeah, I like to smoke weed, 420, yo, and it's like, guys, come on, I get it. It's like, I don't post every time I crack a bottle of Jack Daniels. I do not post every time a beer touches my lips. It's like, we get it. You enjoy smoking weed. The overstatement has been a success. We understand. That might be a little bit of jealousy too, because I get drug tested at my current job, and I haven't been able to smoke weed for like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. I don't even know anymore. But that's not really a bad thing for me, because years back when I was into drugs, I was an addict. I don't have control over myself like that. So I'd go get a bag of weed, and I can't help myself. If I have it, I smoke it till it's gone. At the first even little hint that my buzz is wearing off, I'm right back to it again. So being drug tested, or living with the potential of being drug tested at work and pissing away this awesome job that I have, literally, I guess, I mean, that was great motivation to start with. And I actually convinced myself for the first few years that it's like, okay, I got this awesome job, and I'm just going to take a vacation from weed. I'm going back to it. But now that it's been so many years, I don't think I ever will, because I already know what I'm like with it. And I already know I'll do too much, I'll get addicted, I'll be baked 24/7, and I know it doesn't do good for me. Yeah, I don't know. So, I wanted to make the Kratom video tonight because, I've just been bombarded so much on Facebook today with all these posts about weed. And it's like, guys, there are other plants out there. I'm sure medical marijuana is great. I'm sure there's a lot of people, sick people, that does a lot of good for. But most of you want it legalized because you like to smoke it because it makes you feel good and it gets you high. Let's be honest. I find more exciting than legalizing dope itself, hemp crops. We need to get that rolling. And it's like, okay, sure, I'm sure medical marijuana can do a lot of good for a lot of people. I've seen it with my own eyes. But there are a lot of other plants out there that aren't getting enough press, like Kratom. There are a lot of plants like a boga. A boga can get you off the opiates, and then you can replace the opiates with Kratom. Like, there are so many plants out there that can do so much good for so many people, and they're not getting the press they deserve because everyone's too busy talking about pot. Just a suggestion, but hey, you gotta see the big picture. But before I'm kind of hogging this room here, and there's people wanting to come in here and stretch and do yoga and work out and stuff. So I'm going to tap out for now. Okay, peace.